Hello, Dr. Ed back today with another Total Mind Power lesson for professionals who are disconnected from fulfillment, joy, happiness, and success. See, Total Mind Power Institute is an identity-based operating system for integrated personal, professional, and financial growth. Now, today I want to talk about something that sits underneath nearly every meaningful change we will ever experience as human beings. And that is called awareness. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly recognized something about yourself? And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Maybe it was a habit. Maybe it was a belief. Maybe it was a pattern in your relationship. Maybe it was a story you had been telling yourself for years. Whatever it was, something happened. Awareness appeared. And from that moment forward, you saw things differently. I believe that moment is where real transformation begins. One of the principles within Total Mind Power Institute is awareness is the first step to identity expansion. Not action, not discipline, not strategy, awareness. Because before we can intentionally change something, we must first become aware of it. Now, many people spend years operating from patterns they don't recognize. Patterns of thinking, patterns of emotion, patterns of behavior, patterns of identity. But see, when we can break those patterns and understand how to create patterns of thought that empower us to success, that lead us where we want to go, create patterns of emotion, create patterns of behavior, and live in the pattern of an empowered identity, then a whole new world opens up for us. Life begins to change, and life will never be the same again. The challenge we have is that what becomes familiar often becomes invisible. See, because we can't see it, we're so familiar with it, we stop questioning it. We stop noticing it, and we simply assume that's who we are. But awareness breaks the pattern of assumption. Awareness creates separation, and it allows us to observe something rather than automatically identify it with it. And that changes everything. Now let me show you something powerful. Awareness. Awareness creates choice. Before awareness, we tend to react to our life. After awareness, we gain the ability to choose. I often say, and you may have heard this before, choice is a function of awareness. You've got to be aware that you have a choice. And this is why awareness is so powerful. Not because awareness immediately solves a problem, although if we focus on the problem, we disconnect ourselves from being aware of the solution. We've got to become aware of the solution if we want our problem to be different, to move to a solution, to be something more, better, different in our life. But because awareness reveals the possibility of a different response, that's the real power in awareness. Think about some common examples. Someone becomes aware that they constantly seek approval. See, that's a pattern. It's a pattern of behavior that leads to a specific certainty and an outcome. Someone becomes aware that they avoid difficult conversations. Avoiding difficult conversations is a pattern of behavior. But when you become aware of it, you can't unsee it. Now, you may not know how to change it. You may need more information or need guidance, coaching, and the solution to that, or to create the new pattern. But if you're someone who becomes aware that they define themselves by something that happened years ago, If you become aware of that, you can immediately begin living in the present moment rather than living in the past. Right? And some people some of us, myself included, I was living in the past. And the past became very much my future because I didn't have any other perspective. But when you become aware that you have a choice to focus your mind differently, that becomes the pathway to success. And that awareness is what was the foundation of success mindset mastery. Now, success, we all understand success, but success is just, on a deeper level, it's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It's the progressive realization of something you desire to happen. And if you know where you're going and you know what you want to create, the truth is you're already successful. You're ahead of 97% of the people playing the game. See, the external circumstances do not change. In fact, the external circumstances may not change until the very end. But if you live in the past, when I say the very end, it's the last thing to change. Physical circumstances are the last thing to change in the progression. But if you're living in the past and you're living in that past external circumstance of something that happened years ago that you can't control now, because now's the only moment you have, then you're creating that over and over and over again, and you may be unaware of it. But when you become aware, just become aware of that, your own pattern. You open up a whole new window, a whole new door, and sometimes the door is massive. All you have to do is walk through and start living in the present moment. Start believing in yourself more. Define yourself by a different set of standards, which is identity expansion. And before you know it, it doesn't take as long as you think it will. Before you know it, your external circumstances have changed. You're getting different results because you are focused on a different belief system. But it started with expansion of your awareness. And once the awareness changes, new choices become available. This is also why identity expansion begins with awareness. Most people think identity changes when the behavior changes. I see it differently. Identity begins to change when awareness expands, because awareness allows us to recognize who we have been and how we've been thinking and what standards we've been accepting and what future we may now be capable of creating. Awareness creates structure. And once structure becomes visible, intentional change becomes possible. Now, this idea is connected deeply to the purpose of my work. See, the purpose of my work is to wake people up to possibility. Why is that? Because when I woke myself up, or when I was able to wake up to possibility, everything changed. Right? I was walking around in probability. I was walking around in the past. I was walking around in circumstances I didn't like, and I didn't know how to change them. And it was because I didn't understand how to change how to break the pattern that I was living in. And our brains run on patterns. They're very predictable until we learn how to change the structure of our brain through thinking, through emotional involvement, through repetition, through persistence. So I've made it my life's work to wake people up to this idea. Because when possibility becomes available, that's when awareness expands, not before. When we see more clearly, we can choose more intentionally. When we choose more intentionally, identity begins to expand. And when identity expands, results begin to change. So I'd like to leave you with this one question. What is something you know about yourself today that you did not know 5 years ago? And how did that awareness change the direction of your life? Spend some time reflecting on that. You may discover that many of the most important changes you've experienced began with a simple moment of awareness. The framework on the image is something I'll encourage you to grasp a hold of and seek awareness. Remember, you have a choice. Use repetition to change and apply your awareness. And then watch your results begin to naturally progress. I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. I see you in great success, and I'll see you on the next session.